Welcome to the continued podcast adventures of Superhero Speak.
But I think many of the people that love this character and that love superheroes in general have used these stories as inspiration to say, you know what, I'm going to do something good in the world. I'm going to make a difference like my hero when I was a kid.
That is my fondest memory of it, because when you're doing comic books, you want them to affect people.
Right.
You want people to care. You want to strike emotions. And I knew that Clone Saga was striking a lot of emotions.
Can you imagine Pulp Fiction starring Goofy and Mickey Mouse?
I can totally imagine that.
I'm sure somebody's written that one
quarter pounder with cheese and France, Mickey? What? Royale with cheese, Mickey. Yeah, I can totally.
See?
I would watch the hell out of that movie.
Yes, I gladly sacrifice that my progeny to you, almighty Marvel beast.
But Neil Adams is somewhere going, it's my time.
How do you measure success? Hey everyone, and welcome to Superhero Speak. I'm your host, Dave. Okay, JD, you don't need to make a joke.
Well, I was waiting. What? What's the point? I'm JD because John's got a basement flooded.
Sorry about
video show now.
Yeah, sorry about that, Pat. But we do go live at 8:30. So,
Oh, please, yeah.
So we do have a guest with us tonight. Those who follow us on social media, we've talked about this a couple times now. He hasn't been on the show for 9 years. In fact, the last time you were on, it was Robin Hood Volume 3 was coming out.
Wow. That is a mean while ago. Yeah.
You have been up to a lot since then. We got a lot to talk about. So, of course, the one and only Pat Shand. How are you doing, sir?
Hello. How's it going, everybody?
It's going all right.
Good.
How are you, JD?
Yeah, I'm all right, man. It's thunderstorm going on outside. That's always interesting. Thunderstorms in the Midwest. I'm not having flooding, so I can't talk about that. Like, John certainly has it worse than I do.
Yeah.
I had a great night last night. I took my kid to go see Return of the Jedi at the theaters.
Did not get a chance.
Yes, it is.
For the 40th anniversary, yeah.
Pretty sick.
It was awesome. First movie I ever saw at the movie theater, I got to take my little boy to. So, yeah, it was great. We had an awesome time. Had a good wrestling tournament in the morning, and then doing this. I had a great day. Dave, how about you?
I'm sad I did not get a chance to go because my youngest, well, I only have 2 kids, turned 21 this weekend. Today is his actual birthday. So I feel old. But we Friday we celebrated his birthday at his grandmother's, had dinner and cake and everything, and then yesterday he wanted to play in he plays Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon. He wanted to play in a Pokemon tournament to celebrate his birthday, and then I and my girlfriend took him out to dinner, and then so today he just wanted to stay inside and relax a little bit and not do much. So yeah,
hangover.
Maybe a little bit. But yeah, no, it was a good week. Good weekend. We had fun. How are you doing, Pat?
I'm good. Hanging out with 2 cool guys. Sunday night. It's pretty stormy here too. Actually, it's been pretty nasty out recently. Yeah, we had a burst of beautiful spring, summer, early summer weather, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah, it's actually rained here for 3 days in a row. That's why our other co-host John's not with us. His basement's flooded earlier this evening, and he's trying to clean that up right now. Hey, look, we got our first fan question for you. Any relation to Frank Shand?
Oh, that's that's a Star Wars thing, right?
Yes, I think so. That's from our good friend Don. So yeah, that definitely would be Star Wars related.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Shout to whoever took my last name and applied it to the fictional character. I appreciate it. There's also I think an R&B singer called Remy Shand. So right now I was the second most famous Shand, and now Fennec came in and stole my shit, which is I don't like it.
Of course not.
So now I'm number 3, which it doesn't seem right,
It's not I mean, maybe it's different from your perspective, but it's not a very common last name, I don't think.
No, it's not. I've had people say, "Oh, that's very Irish," but to me, I've never even heard it before. I don't know any Shans besides myself, my family, Remy, and now this Fennec. It's BS.
You had a lock on it. Now, it's all changed. So, yeah. So, and Oliva, I always thought that was an interesting last name.
It means olive.
I know, but then I saw there's a cigar company with the same name.
Where? No relation to that. They're very wealthy. I'm not.
You're not.
No.
Here we go.
No.
Don's letting us know it's from Boba Fett. So
got you.
I thought John was about to jump on.
No worries. He'll be on eventually. Cool. So we're all caught up. Actually, it's funny. I wanted to do this. So we kind of started something last week. I thought we had a little bit of fun with it. JD definitely enjoyed it because it had a lot of good things to say about him. Are you familiar with ChatGPT there, Pat?
Yeah, I know what it is. I know it's probably going to kill us all soon.
Yeah, we're going to enjoy it until it goes rogue. So in the meantime, we're going to do what all humans do and underrate it and have fun, and then it will murder us all, and then it won't matter anyway.
Yes. So we asked last week. We asked it if tell us about the podcast Superhero Speak, and it got some stuff right, some stuff wrong. It was interesting. Then we asked, but it didn't mention JD. JD's came in 6 years now. JD,
that's messed up. Messed up, ChatGPT.
2017, just about 6 years.
Yeah, just about 6 years ago he came in. It mentioned the original third host, and then so we asked it directly, who's JD Oliva, and it got a couple things wrong, but a lot of nice things about it. Yeah,
it was wonderful. I support the AI because it's floating my ego, so that's a good thing.
So
until it kills me.
I asked it actually right before we logged in, who is Pat Shand?
Oh Jesus, okay.
Now I'm kind of curious how much of this is still correct.
Okay.
Pat Shand is an American writer, editor, and teacher who has worked in the comic book industry for over a decade. He is known for his work on titles as Robin Hood, Charmed, Van Helsing, and Grimm Fairy Tales, all published by Xenoscope. Shand is also written for Marvel, DC, and Boom Studios.
Already one wrong thing there. Okay.
In addition to his work in comics, Shand has also written novels, short stories, and screenplays. He currently teaches writing at St. John's University in Queens, New York. No. I know you don't live in New York anymore, so
I do live in New York.
Oh, okay.
But I don't currently teach, and I've never taught at St. John's University. That's hilarious.
I wonder where, you kind of wonder where this stuff comes from, because I know all the information came from the internet, but you kind of wonder, where did it come from?
I do wonder where it comes from. I wonder where. I mean, a lot, like the DC thing. I've never written for DC. I don't know where that comes from, but it's interesting.
You did write Spider-Man, right, for Marvel?
Yes. Spider-Man, Thor, Iron Man, Guardians, and Captain America.
Yeah. So I read Spider-Man. That's how I know. So yeah. Interesting. What did you write for Boom?
Boom, I did an Adventure Time comic story. And yeah, them not mentioning Kickstarter is crazy. I kind of feel like the AI probably has only access to certain sites, and certain sites block it, so it doesn't really analyze everything,
Right.
But yeah, very interesting what it had to say. Yeah.
Didn't for me either with Kickstarter, because I ran 7 of them and it never mentioned a single one of them. So I think you might be onto something there.
Yeah, because I feel like if it was pulling from either Kickstarter itself, certain sites, or even my social media presence, it would have probably brought that in as the main thing right now. Because the teaching, I've spoken about here and there, but I mean, I think the only site that mentions me as a teacher still is probably my my wiki entry on the Charmed wiki page, but I don't see it anywhere else.
Raven Gregory says Pat is looking quite pink today. I assume this
Yeah,
is someone you know.
Yeah, Raven is he is a former writer. He retired in the mid 2010s. He used to be known for stuff like Wonderland from Xenoscope.
Okay.
He is now a let me see, negative Z-list comedian. He's a friend of mine. We have an ongoing social media beef, you know. And yeah, I mean, I would say I don't even need to roast him back. Anyone just go to his Facebook page and see his latest post today. His entire social media presence is a dramatic self-own.
Cool. All right. We will we'll leave that over there. welcome, Raven. I'm glad you're watching. All right.
You're not welcome, Raven.
All right.
Here, bro.
Speaking of social media, actually, there is a segment that we do. I'm going to stick with it. I know, JD, you're like, why? We have a guest.
Whatever.
We have a segment called Social Media Madness where we interact with our fans, especially the ones who tweet, and they respond to like stuff we've talked to. And actually, I like the first one's a good thing to mention. Kassan Warren, one of our biggest fans, just mentioned we talked about the Super Mario movie a couple weeks ago. We did a review of it, and it is the first animated movie to hit $1 billion.
Really?
Did you see it, Pat?
No. I mean, the first ever?
Yeah.
So this is the biggest animated film of all time.
Yes.
That I mean, if you asked me if it was in the top 300, I wouldn't have said yes. That's crazy to me.
Yeah. It's killing it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's Kassan says he's our biggest fan.
Thanks, Kassan.
I think it's because it is a very family-friendly movie, and I don't think we've gotten like good ones that are related to properties we all enjoy, in a long time.
Yeah, most skew older, and this one really doesn't. Like it.
Yeah,
my 7-year-old thought it was just fantastic. He absolutely loved it.
My granddaughters loved it. They're both 5, so yeah.
Interesting. And I know that people love Chris Pratt too. There's definitely the contingent that kind of pushes back on the internet, kind of demonizing him, that want to go out and show, like, we support Chris Pratt, like he's the everyman kind of actor. I've definitely seen that. Outside of that, I really have seen no conversation about the film at all. So it's cool.
Yeah, it'll be on streaming, I'm sure, before you know it. You can watch it then. But yeah, it's just fun. It's like you don't go to it expecting any kind of deep storyline. It's just a fun Mario adventure for an hour and a half or whatever it is. Yeah, so
perfect kids movie, really.
Yeah.
Sick.
All right, cool. Of course, we talked about the upcoming Ahsoka trailer. Well, Ahsoka show, the trailer for it. To which Don responded with, "It was excellent. This will be another smash hit for Star Wars." Huh. And then Kassan chimed in with, "They hit the right tone, the right casting, and the right action. The scope of the story is impressive. The dialogue sounded good. I almost feel like Disney has discovered a long-kept secret. Good writing makes good movies."
It's a bold take.
Do you agree with that, Pat? Does good writing make good movies?
It can, sometimes a bad cast can turn what feels like good writing into clunky lines, but I'd say so, probably, yeah. I haven't seen this trailer. This is the Red Girl, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't watch this franchise very much myself, but I know that people like the character. I only know her from like seeing clips of. It looked to me like a 3D animation type cartoon. So that I know about, but I've never seen the show at all.
Okay, kind of curious. Like where you fit generation wise, like because people from my generation, we grew up on Star Wars, so like we consume everything Star Wars. I think you're a little younger than me. Did you grow up with like what was your Star Wars for your age group?
The prequels were my Star Wars, but I didn't like them. I went to the movies and I tried to watch the the first one, and I ended up playing Game Boy during it. And then I tried the second one, and it wasn't for me. I ended up seeing the new Rey Star Wars, the Force Awakens. I saw that in theaters. Thought that was cool. But I didn't go back to see 2 and 3, and the shows aren't for me personally.
Yeah. Up. We have corrections here. Okay. Raven said, "Damn it, you guys made me look. It's not the first animated film to hit $1 billion. It's the first movie this year to hit $1 billion." All right. Thank you for the correction. Mark says, Emma Ray Gunn says, Super Mario is number 11 in animated movies. Lion King is still number 1, and it's definitely the biggest grossing video game movie. All right. Fine, guys.
Yeah, Lion King is the one where I was like, it beat Lion King, you know?
Yeah.
I would say Lion King and Frozen are the ones that I would say have to be at the lead.
Lion King's one of the ones they re-released a couple times, though, too, right? And they count all of that. Like, if they re-release it for an anniversary, they count that towards the box office. It's one of the reasons they re-released Avatar a few times, so that it would stay number 1.
See, if you could put Raven's most recent comment on the screen real quick. See, this is why Raven is a negative Z-list comedian.
Why is it all super successful people like Pat dressed like a shop at Goodwill? He's so humble.
See, the funniest part is that Raven wears these ratty wife beaters, like this red wife beater. And here, I mean, like, bro, come on. His jokes have no basis in reality. And I've been coaching him too. You know, I'll message him and I'll say, Raven, when you attack me, do it like this. You know, mention this, which is an insecurity of mine. There's a base in reality here. So when you say it, it's going to actually be funny. But he just doesn't learn, bro. You know?
We should have brought him on the show.
I mean, it's funny that you guys have never heard of him, and you met me as a Xenoscope writer back in the day.
Yes,
that was his heyday, you know, and it's long past, right?
Yeah, I guess. Too bad he retired. You know, I mean,
it was a forcible retirement, though. You know.
So I see. We'll leave that where it lies.
Yeah.
The other thing we talked about last week was Elizabeth Olsen, if you can believe her, said that she doesn't currently have a contract with Marvel for any upcoming films. And so Randy replied with random Randy Savage from the Cult 45 podcast replied with, "Sounds like someone is trying to get another boatload of money from the mouse. I'm sure once we get Magneto back to the MCU, she will show back up," which I couldn't resist. I replied with, "Sounds so. Are you saying she has daddy issues?" Which he replied with, "God, I hope so." And the Wizard podcast said, "I trust her completely. She is the most purest of waifus." Oh my goodness, Joey. I assume you've seen the Marvel movies.
Yes, I have seen up to the Spider-Man Before Last, the one after Endgame. When they introduced all the TV shows, it kind of got overwhelming.
Yes.
But I will eventually catch up. I do like those. As far as Elizabeth Olsen, I do feel like it's one of those things where if she's saying that, it feels like marketing to get people talking about it. You know, I see that a lot. I personally feel as if the whole, Sony's not going to let Marvel do more Spider-Man. That to me was like, hey, yeah, they are. You know, like that never felt real. All these things really never feel real. They feel like blatant marketing, and I don't mind it. You know, I think it's smart to do. In fact, I mean, I think that, you know, that the whole ongoing bit about Tom Holland almost spoiled Spider-Man, you know, like that.
Yeah.
That always feels like blatant marketing. You know, like none of this feels like it's real, which, I mean, I don't mind. I feel like it's Hollywood trying to capture that what happens on social media a bit more naturally. I feel like they're trying to start these conversations, which why wouldn't they, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was leaked that Paul Rudd was going to be Ant-Man, and he denied it and denied it and denied it, and then it was like, oh yeah, there he is. So
Right.
yeah, I'm sure they're told what to say. JD, you're being quiet.
I'm just listening right now. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, you know what? I think that's enough social media madness. Oh, okay. Hold on. One more question or comment from Raven. Pat also never feels real. I imagine he feels like a blow-up doll someone never cleaned come to life. Ow. Ow.
I mean,
you know,
it would be ow if it wasn't just randomly chosen gross words. You know, like I told him, basis in reality, heighten it, humor, and he never learns. He just never learns.
All right. Well, on that lovely note, here's our good friend Don to tell you how you can follow us on social media and be part of Social Media Madness.
Enjoying the show? Do you want to be part of Social Media Madness? Well, go ahead and head on over to superheroespeak.com. You'll find all the links you need, episodes of the show, comic reviews by Chris, and other articles. We're posting stuff on there all the time. And while you're there, you can also check out the rest of the Geek World All-Stars podcast network. Include great shows like the Pop Prison Power podcast, Colt 45, baby, So Wizard podcast, Fans on Patrol, the Gorilla Brain podcast, and of course, Superhero Speak. Hashtag GW All-Stars, and you're not going to be disappointed. So, make sure that you are commenting on our Twitter articles. Could be a poignant comment, could be a stupid one. Either way, gives you a chance for Dave to possibly mispronounce your Twitter handle. All right, well, I've rambled on enough. Let's head back to Dave and the gents on Superhero Speak.
Thanks for that, Don. And don't forget to check out the Omega Level Nerds podcast, available on YouTube and wherever podcasts are available. And you know what? Real quick, Hassan does make a good point here. I think it's more market research than social media hype. The mouse wants to see if their actors still hold popularity. So I'm talking about, obviously, what's her name?
Elizabeth Olsen.
Elizabeth Olsen. Thank you. So yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. Like, we live in a world, right, where you're gonna float things out there to see, like, oh, are they still popular? What people think of this? So, and it's a world of social media.
I don't know. I always thought too it could be a little bit of her marketing herself, right? Like it's like trying to negotiate a better deal. Ah, that's signed right now, you know. So could be all those things. Could be all of them together.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with more conversation with Pat.
Some podcasts are like this.
On top, missionary, pull the leg over, so that way it's like they're on their side a bit. So that way it's like you're hitting it from the back, but you're still getting face action.
Yeah.
That way you still reach your hand up
twister
there.
shit.
Yeah, but you still get deep because you get and face
and neck.
It's a power position.
What would you call that? Like a wine opener?
The bop it, you can smack it, you can choke it, you can pull it, you can do everything.
And some podcasts are like this.
It's hard. I'm one day off vaping right now, bro. And I want to fucking smoke a bowl out of my own nuts, bro, of pure nicotine.
But only one podcast is where you can get in-depth analysis like this.
Ooh, we let that slide. That was woo.
He's a
Sweet
bad
and
guy.
sour
It's
chicken
fine.
ass nigga.
He's a bad guy.
Ooh,
let's just walk over this one.
Because he was a villain, we let that slide. That was. Oof. I forgot about that. My bad. Just because you naming food, nigga, don't make it better, dog. Like, it's still racist as shit,
It's so much racism,
bro. Also, I know ain't no black people wrote this, so I know this is just.
This is just them.
Tripping in
we can say
racism.
whatever we want through his mouth. Come on, think of all the racist things you want to say to those Asian people.
Get it off your
Say it.
chest. It'll be spoken in jive, so it wouldn't hurt so much.
His sweet jive mouth.
You are now listening to Cult 45.
This is Beat 'em Down.
And I'm Random Randy Savage.
Find us on all your podcatching apps like Podbean or Spotify. And follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Or just go to www.cult45podcast.com.
Also, check out our YouTube for that sweet, sweet video content.
Cult 45, the only podcast that puts hair on your chest.
That's a great one.
Fantastic. That was their best one.
Yeah,
That's so funny.
They're friends of ours, and we advertise. Actually, in the audio version, that's where we plug in actual ads. And it's funny because we've known them for a while, and he keeps changing the ad up every couple of weeks, and it's fun. They're one of the best. Like if you like cult movies, they're one of the best podcasts to listen to.
You might have to rip the audio this week and put it actually in the show, because that was fantastic.
That was a great ad for sure. And that Theo Von clip is just, Theo Von to me is a podcast goat, and the actual podcast itself, Cult 45, seems great too.
Cool. So, Pat, it's all about you now. It's been 9 years since we've chatted.
Long time.
I'm sure you've been up to, I don't know, one or two things since then.
Yeah, we have.
So, actually, you know what? Let's start with, we haven't really talked in a while, and there might be people out there who aren't familiar with your work. So, what got you interested in working in comics in the first place?
Interested in working in comics. I just always wanted to be a writer, period. Growing up, I read novels. I saw writer credits on things like TV. I would go into an experience, like I would go on an amusement park ride and hear lines of dialogue, and I would think, oh, somebody wrote that. There's writers who had their hands in everything.
Right.
And I first started reading comics when I noticed that TV shows that I loved would end on TV and continue in comics through licensed media. That made me want to read those as a fan, and then I saw that they were just freelance writers who were able to write these awesome media tie-in books, and then they were having their own careers doing creator-owned work. Like, for example, I saw Brian K. Vaughan. I saw he was writing Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I saw he was writing Runaways from Marvel. And then I saw he had two epic ongoing creator-owned series, Ex Machina, Why the Last Man. And I was like, this kind of a career is just, it's incredible, that you could do this in comics. And I noticed that there was a lower barrier of entry than TV or novels, especially as a fan, to talk to the writers. You can just go on. At the time, I was able to read a comic, go on Facebook, add the writer, and be talking to them that day. The same could not be said of a showrunner on TV. So that was interesting to me as a reader, and it became apparent to me that I would be able to push my way into this industry as a writer and write comics as well. It was never just comics for me. It was theater, novels, film, comics, all at once, always. And it just so happens that comics has been the one that has taken off and has been amazingly successful for me, especially the past few years, and it's allowed me to develop a community of creators and artists, writers around myself that I feel at home in. And yeah.
Cool. What was one of because you mentioned they continued into comics, the TV shows you were watching. What were some of the shows you were watching that were doing that back then?
Buffy, Angel, Supernatural, later on True Blood. You would see, back then, it's totally different now, but back then genre shows were far and few between. You would get a new genre show now and then, and the ones that came out, if it wasn't good, you wouldn't see a new one for a while. I remember when the show Moonlight came out. It was this CBS vampire show, and it came out, and I was like, oh no, it sucks. We're not going to have a horror-based fantasy show like this come on again for years now, So those shows were so infrequent that when they would come on and end, I always wanted more, and IDW at the time was great with continuing those kind of things. Movies too, they had a great Ghostbusters license. I don't know if they still do those, but those were great. They even did more mainstream things like 24. I loved watching 24 with my dad. The fact that there was a comic was so unique to me because you don't see that kind of thing happen in many other media where they just pick up the show, assume knowledge, and write it as if it's an episode. Or in the case of Buffy, they did a whole new season. They did multiple seasons where the actual showrunner was working on it. That's unique to comics. In media novels, you will not see the showrunner of the show writing the novel, with the very rare exception of Rob Thomas did it for Veronica Mars. But generally, comics is where you go to see your favorite shows continue. And that trend has definitely fallen off a bit in the past decade or decade and a half. But that's what drew me in to start with,
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because it's interesting. I would think with Marvel TV, it would be picking back up, but no, they don't tie their comics and the shows in together at all. So, which, I mean, I think that's a missed opportunity.
I think they look at the mainstream comics more as R&D for what they want to do, more so than trying to tie stuff in. I think it's just where they kind of do the research development, keep stuff in tune with or in line with their continuity, their 616, let's say, continuity, more so than just trying to tie into the movies. I don't know. Kassan says, yeah, remember the nuclear mess, the Cape. I bombed so bad, I thought we'd never see another superhero show again. I have zero memory of this show.
Really?
I don't remember it at all. What was the Cape?
It was a really bad show. I did watch the first episode when it came on, and they were trying to do something beyond the capabilities of the time. The CGI, it's a CGI cape that's like got all these magic powers and stuff, and it looked bad. And I'm going to say late 80s, early 90s.
Oh, I have no memory of that. I have to look that up real quick, actually. The Cape.
So
2011. You were way off. Oh wait, there's two. They remade it apparently. There are two shows called The Cape. There was one from 96 to 97, and there was one in 2011. There's a 2011 version too.
I remember the 90s one. That's the one I saw.
Kassan, which one are you referring to? Because I have zero memory of either of these things. I had no idea.
All right. That's not important right now.
No.
So obviously the thing that kind of kicked up me wanting to have you back on, I did want to talk about this a little bit. Speaking of TV, and he's talking about the 2011, says Kassan, is that you announced that one of your books, Destiny New York, is going to be made into a miniseries. Is it on first from Sony Pictures or
no full TV series?
Full TV. Oh, cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, what was that like? What was that process like when they came to you and told you they wanted to do this?
It's been interesting. I got a call. I mean, all of my creator-owned stuff tends to get to some stage of development that I do in the direct market. I've been lucky as far as that goes. But the truth is that that's true of many creators. You just don't hear about it because they tend to stall out at these early stages. So very often I'll get the call like, oh, hey, so-and-so is looking at this. Or this studio picked this up and we're looking for a writer. And my response would be like, at first I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But as time went on, I began to see how little that usually led to things.
Okay.
And so when this happened and we had, I got the call that Tegan and Sarah were going to be producers and that they have this overall deal with Sony. First of all, I was excited because obviously, I mean, I love their music. I think that they are great creators beyond just being musicians. They ran their own TV series. They've written a book and they have produced years of incredible work. So for them to be the ones who are leading the show and shaping what it's going to be incredible to me. They've been also personally great in our interactions. So that part couldn't excite me more. You know, I'm always excited to hear, you know, who's looking at the things. I remember early on, this didn't end up being anything, but being told that I had 50 Cent and Mandy Moore looking at something separately. Very, very exciting to me, you know.
Cool.
Mandy Moore, childhood crush, A Walk to Remember Forever, and 50 Cent, you know, when Get Rich or Die Trying came out, New York was taken over.
Yeah.
And that was my childhood, you know. That's the kind of stuff that I grew up in, really interested in. So that was cool then, but for it to actually come to fruition here, have it announced, hearing little details here and there about who they're thinking for certain characters, it's been absolutely incredible. Destiny New York is the work of my career. It's my long running series. It is my equivalent to a Why the Last Man, where it's a long running creator owned title that I have complete control over, which I've always wanted. And I feel like that kind of thing, the standard direct market comics industry has made it very hard to have these kind of runs. So I'm very glad that I've been able to do that in this market. So yeah, for this to be the one that's going off is very, very heartening to me.
And for those listening and watching who might not be familiar, what is the elevator pitch for Destiny New York?
Destiny New York, in the briefest terms, is it takes the idea of the fantasy hero, how the story always ends when the prophecy is fulfilled. This happens. This is what happens next. The extended pitch is. It follows a girl who had a prophecy made about her when she's young. She completes her destiny when she's just 13. Now she's entering her 30s trying to figure out life post-destiny.
Oh, that's actually an interesting idea.
Very much.
Cool.
So what were the influences when you're creating that idea? Like, how did you come upon this story?
How did I come upon the story? I mean, it was a mixture of a lot. I was in the middle of my Robin Hood run. I talked to you when it was volume 3. This run was the ongoing, which would be technically volume 4, but we just called it the ongoing. It was a new issue 1 through issue 20. And I had an idea for a middle arc that didn't end up getting made, and it just stuck with me. And it was really a scene or two that I ended up developing into a separate pitch, and I was just really interested in the idea of, following characters to places where we don't usually see. These fantasy stories have that kind of like built-in ending if it's prophecy based. And beyond that, influences were, funny enough, Tegan and Sarah. Harry Potter was a major influence because that's, we have a character who is a bit of a Harry Potter parody character who starts that way and then grows in his own direction. And that was the core, that's our generation's defining fantasy story. So I wanted to sort of subvert that and approach it in a way where, the story isn't over once the hero does X. And beyond that, work like 6 Feet Under and The Sopranos, and Leftovers were a major force of inspiration for me there. And I can go on and on, but largely it was, the core was me wanting to do a long-running series where I explore multiple characters and one specific core theme over the course of a decade or more.
Cool. So when did you get into this process of now turning it into a TV show? And you said that they're looking at actors and you're surprised. Obviously, I know you can't talk a lot about it, but is there an issue, like, because you're talking about this like it's your baby, like there has to be a level of trust in the people that are going to be creating the show. Like, do you have any doubts about it? How's that?
No, they made the con. They made Sainthood. I have no doubts now.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
How involved are you going to be in the day-to-days of the show? Like, are you going to be actually working with the writers' room, or is this something you're just going to kind of hand off and let them kind of do their thing with?
You know that I don't know personally. I am going to be. I have some work in the show. I definitely want to make sure that my word is heard. But at the same time, I recognize that it's a different medium, and I am ready to do what I'm ready to play whatever part I can, while also realizing that there are many hands at work in shaping this into what it's going to be.
Right. And I think too, when you're going from comics, which other than when you're working with an artist, but a lot of what you're doing, it's personal, right? Like it's even more so when you're writing a novel or a short story. But when you're writing a comic, like you pretty much have most of the control of the elements of what's going into the story. And there might be a moment that in your mind means X.
Right.
But now another creator looking at it, it means Y to them. And it kind of changes the perspective of what's going on, and it can either be really good and bring something new to the story you weren't expecting, or it could be like, no, that's not really what I wanted. Are you, have you thought, have you thought about those kinds of things? And are you just excited to have this, come to life?
I'll tell you this. My ideal is that, like the comic, I will see things in the show, and you'll see things in the show that can be interpreted in multiple different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually just talking about this on a show yesterday, is that there are certain moments in the show. No, sorry. Certain moments in the comic where I've talked to my editor, Shannon, and I'll be like, hey, this character in this moment does something that is very unlikable. Are people going to be able to, forgive her and still invest in her journey? And there have been multiple times where Shannon was like, that character did the right thing. It's this character who was wrong. And I was like, oh, that's great then. That's what I want. I want to do work where people can interpret it in multiple different ways, where there's no strict, this is the right direction, this character does the wrong thing. I'm not interested in that sort of black and white morality. I want characters to exist like they're people in the real world, where people are going to have different interpretations. And I want to see that in the show, because I see that as a strength. So if the showrunner, whoever they end up being, if Tegan and Sarah as producers end up seeing something that I wrote in a different way than I intended, well, the truth is that is what I want for the readers. So of course I would want that for the showrunners as well.
Kassan's got an interesting comment here. He says the Script Notes podcast has educated me on this process. It's smart for a creator to find the right studio and through a solid producer and just let the thing run. Good notes actually there, Kassan. How do you feel so far with working with this whole process? Like, where are you at personally? And you got a very sober outlook on this. Either it's going to work or, I'm going to keep moving on. But how are you feeling right now about this whole thing, kind of where it stands?
I feel good. The only thing that's sort of like, on the horizon as a what if is that we are likely to see a writer's strike come soon, which would probably impact things. I don't know to what extent. I don't know how much can be done before then. That's not really for me to chime in on. But it's definitely the only thing where I'm like, oh, I'm not sure how that's going to go, But no, as far as the rest, all the news that has come to me has been cool to hear. I have not had any issues with anything. Yeah, I mean, I'm very invested. I'm very interested. I think it's very exciting.
Cool. I mean, it sounds like you're happy with the team and and you feel good about it. So that's the most important thing, I think, right now.
And I've had I have said my piece to my rep about what I want the show to be like, and I believe that's been heard, because there are some people who would see a diverse female led cast and think, oh, this could be a show like a CW show. This could be a Riverdale vibe, and that's the last thing I want.
Yeah,
I want a prestige show like 6 Feet Under, like Boardwalk Empire, like Sopranos. That is the vibe that I write it as. That is the vibe that I want for the show.
So while this project is gestating, what do you have working on the comic front right now? Like, kind of, you got to keep things moving, got to keep the train going. Where are we at with that? Where are you going with that?
Yeah, the comic for the series.
Yes.
Yeah, still ongoing. Every year I do at least one Kickstarter. Right now there are kind of two main ways to read the book. You can read them through my Kickstarter, where I am working on volume 6 right now. It would be the equivalent of an issue, probably up to like 42 or so of the main title, and that will continue for years and years and years. And Black Mask licenses the comic for single issues, and they have done so far 13 issues of the main series, and are launching a new number 1 to cover the third arc that it will be in stores next month. So yeah, it's just ongoing now. There's no change in what we're doing as far as that goes. Maybe some new attention to it, which would be great. But yeah, no, just moving on the same path. And all that this would impact is potentially the length of the series, because I always key into, how each campaign is doing, if we're growing, if the audience is, if everyone who's been on track is staying with us, because, I have multiple endpoints. I could end at a volume 11. I could end at a volume 20 plus, and I do have a definitive end in mind. So I'm very careful to bring the ending about when the time is right, not too early, not too late. So I think that all the impact that this would have is giving me more creative freedom to end it at the exact right time by boosting us.
Yes. You also have another Kickstarter going on right now. The link is actually in the description below for those who are watching. You summoned Cthulhu to back your Kickstarter.
Yeah, it's called I Summoned Cthulhu to fund my Kickstarter.
To fund your Kickstarter.
Yes. It's a horror comedy. It's sort of like This Is the End meets the comics industry. It takes real life comic book creators and it puts them as the characters in this story where creators are they pledge their souls to dark gods in exchange for success. And the joke of the book is that each dark god represents a trend in the comics community. You have the Bad Girl Comics Dark God. You have the Cthulhu Dark God, because this is a major trend in comics as well. You have the 90s Comics Dark Gods, and so on and so on. I poke fun lovingly while also fully embracing all these trends within the industry. It's a 3-issue series. It's horror comedy. It's a lot of fun. It's written by me, drawn by Patrick Mulholland, and colored by James Offready with letters by Jim Campbell. It has been one of the funnest that we've had on with my company, Space Between, with our work.
Yeah, and as you're watching it, there is 5 days left.
Yes.
So that's Thursday or Friday?
We end Friday.
Friday. So it ends Friday. So yeah, click that link below and back it, because it looks like a lot of fun.
Thanks.
Pat Kassan has a question for you. He wants to know, what are your thoughts on comics versus novels? Do you find comics constricting and novels less accessible?
Two questions there, really, because comics constricting. Sometimes work for hire comics, yeah, because if I am in control, if it's a comic that I'm publishing through my company, it could be as long and short as I want. I could do. For Destiny New York, I have done 11-page chapters. I have done 45-page chapters. I let the story speak for itself. I don't let the medium constrict me by any means. But sometimes, there'll be work for hire, especially if I'm working with somebody else's outline, where I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, you know what? This is a mini-series that's squeezed into a one-shot. I'm going to make it work, but I do feel constricted for sure. So I pick the moments here and there. But the truth is, I also write games. And with games, talking about constriction, the backstory of characters has to fit in the description of a skin, which is a lot more constricting than a comic. So let's say each medium has its different levels of constriction and different strengths. As far as do I find novels less accessible, the answer is probably no. It seems like it would be, because comics you could just read and be done with in 20 minutes for a single issue. The truth is, though, novels are more accessible to the general public because people are more aware of what a novel is. It sounds crazy whenever I say it, but the truth is that whenever I travel and I speak to someone about what I do, a very common response is, "Oh, they still make those?" People don't really know what comics are outside of classic superhero comics.
Yeah.
And that speaks to how inaccessible our industry has made comics by really leaning into a very niche audience. And part of what I want to do with Space Between Entertainment is to make comics that aren't for a niche audience. They're comics that can be read by anyone, enjoyed by anybody, and are promoted that way, where I want every issue that I do, every comic that I do, to be a great first comic for anybody, where you don't read it and you go, "Oh, how do I even read this?" That I think is a major problem with mainstream comics that I'm personally avoiding, because the comics that I read when I went into comics, I gravitated toward the books that didn't speak to me like it was inside baseball, and I think that's important, and I think that is why it might be answering your question from a different angle, but I feel that novels are probably more accessible.
That's a fascinating answer. Personally, I want to know, as a publisher, how do you feel like you have to reach out to those non-traditional comics readers? Let's say, how do you try to expand that reach as an indie publisher to non-normal comic readers, and to get more dudes up the streets to check your stuff out?
I think it is about, honestly, I feel like in a way it is, I take a page from manga's book. Manga has an incredible penchant for putting the pitch in the title. You see these long, seemingly clunky manga titles that sell the book to those who want to know what it is on the front cover. And that has worked incredibly for me. At cons, my biggest books, Destiny New York, sure, that is there for the readers who ask, "Oh, what's that?" Beautiful. But what sells to someone passing by and makes them stop, Gangster Ass Barista, title is the pitch. Smoke weed, see the future. They see these titles and they go, "Whoa, what's that?" So 1, it's eye-catching. 2, it's funny. 3, the story is the title. You read the title and you know what it is. That manga does very well. American comics couldn't do that worse than they are right now. So I do feel that that is one of many ways that I've reached out to someone who might not know what comics are and pull them into my world.
Kasanaz follows it up: do you think we'll ever see a shift in comics to Japan's manga model, more content, less color and detail?
I don't know if I agree with the premise of the question. I think that we are shifting toward a more manga-based model. Color, yes, that part of the question I entirely agree with. I think that we're going to see more black and white comics. I personally, my graphic novels are black and white. The single issues that I publish are color, but Destiny New York, all of those in that world, Prison Witch, all black and white. As far as detail, I would say that manga is more detailed than American comics. It's just not as busy. The detail is chosen in different ways. Yes, there are very undetailed manga books, but look at many of the comics now from Marvel. Look at the kids' comics from Kaboom, Scholastic. I would say that there's more detail in manga, even though it's churned out in a different way, and the structure of the page requires less physical work than a larger comic book page.
It's a shame that John isn't here.
Yeah, we had this He'd be happy because we have this reoccurring gag on the show where John reads the titles of his favorite anime, and it's very much in line of what you're talking about, where the pitch is the title.
Yeah.
So that's very fascinating. Why when you do black and white books, is it an economic decision, an economical decision, excuse me, or is it more of a this is just the way I choose to tell my stories when you pump these things out? Like, is it more financially driven because it's cheaper, so to say, or is it more this is the best way I can tell my story?
It's all that. It is all that. Destiny New York started as financial for sure. But part of the conversation was, all right, so if we do color, it will cost this. If we do black and white, it will cost this. Mm-hmm. What are the strengths and problems of black and white? A major strength is the indie vibe. I brought that up. I was like, you know what? What other comics do black and white? Right now, The Walking Dead, biggest indie book ever. Strangers in Paradise, best indie book ever. I immediately saw. I was like, oh, why are we trying to do color? Like, why would this need color? And then I was like, all right, let's do a test. Add grayscale to this and treat it as if it was a complete page, not just inks. And Mamo Petano, who was the original artist, did that, and it looked great. And from there, I feel like every volume gets better and better at utilizing grayscale in a way where, like now, the rarity of that comment of it's black and white. I almost never hear it. And I used to hear it a lot more because one, it was more rare. Manga wasn't as influential on American comics back then as it is now. And two, I think that if you pick it up, the thought is less, it's not in color, and more, oh, wow.
I agree. I agree with that. And you can do a lot, I think, in black and white if you know what you're doing to do contrasts and make it look beautiful. And, you're right. I do hear it less and less like, oh, this isn't black and white. Because, again, there's also a lot of younger fans who read manga, and a lot of that manga, or however you say it, that is in black and white as well. But I will say early on, when we got a comic to review that was a very indie, like one guy did it himself kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was black and white. And like he had panels where there was no grayscale, there's no shading done. It was all like everything was black and white.
Yeah.
And it was like I had to be honest with him. I'm like, this is hard to see what's going on because of the way you did it. Like there's no detail or anything. It's like, you might as well have done stick figures. So yeah, like if you don't know what you're doing, it's bad. But I do, obviously you've been in the business long enough, the differences. But yeah, that's just a word of warning to like people out there. You can do so much in Photoshop nowadays with grayscale and all of that stuff, and have shading and make it look beautiful. If you don't know what you're doing as an artist. So
it's true. I mean, there's a world of difference between pencils and inks that aren't colored versus a complete black and white page. If something just looks unfinished, whether it be black and white or color, it's not going to look like a cool comic to read,
Right.
And I think that personally the difference is obvious. It should be obvious to those making it, and it's obvious to the consumer. It's one of those things where you'll know it if you see it. Grayscale shading is a major part of it, but just also look at manga. Not all manga has grayscale shading, but some of them use line weight in such a way that creates this beautiful depth to the page that it doesn't even need grayscale shading. So yeah, I really think it's more of a you know it if you see it thing. But yeah, just like basic line art that's not colored to me is not a complete black and white page.
Yeah.
Pat, what's your creative process looking like these days when you're scripting and like going through the thing of writing a script and getting the book format? Like, what's that look like now as opposed to when you started doing this?
A few changes that I made. There are some books that I do my old way, and my old way being that it's still my main way, I guess. I will just fully script it. I will, write panel by panel. I'll do the dialogue as I go along. Sometimes I'll panel out a full scene and then go back and add dialogue and just tweak here and there. That's how I've always done that. But what has changed a little bit is this. I have more artists who are waiting on me for work. So sometimes if it is a book that isn't Destiny New York, which is very dialogue driven, I will script out the panels and leave dialogue suggestions. Because very important to me is the facial acting and the character acting that's drawn in. So the artist needs to know what the character is feeling, what they're saying. But in some cases, to me, the artist doesn't need to know what the exact line is. So very often, if I'm on a time crunch, I'll panel it out. I'll write the panels as they have to be drawn. And instead of a full line of dialogue, I'll write, for example, a second Kickstarter that I have live now through my imprint, Cheeky Comics, which is my adult imprint. I have this story, Amorini Amateur Cupid. Now, it's a fun, art-driven story. So I'll have panel 1 fully described. Dialogue will be in italics. It'll say, Amorini is going to say something to the effect of blank. And I'll write out the intent of the line. And then when the art is done, I'll go back and write the dialogue finalized over the art that way. I prefer to do it the other way on most titles, but I find that on my not safe for work stuff, that's better because it's a lot more art driven. But Destiny New York, I'll always keep it my personal way is that I prefer to fully script it out and finish the dialogue first.
All right. You know what? It's funny you said not safe for work, so that made me think of a question I did have. You, of course, most famously known for your work with Xenoscope, with Robin Hood, and well, I mean, that's how I found you. I think a lot of people found you. Xenoscope obviously has a very interesting reputation, right? Because people look at the covers and they don't go past that. They don't actually read the stories. What do you say to people that are like, "Oh, Xenoscope is just a TNA book"?
In the past, I used to say, "Please give me a chance. Believe me, it's good." Now I tend to say, "Oh, you are a 50-year-old guy, right?" That's who it is. It's older guys who believe they're speaking for young women. Don't do this. It's sexist. The cover is sexist. Who's buying the covers are women, largely. This audience of older men who believe that they have to fight like white knights for the rights of women. Don't go to conventions and see what Xenoscope's booth looks like. They don't see the numbers on, for example, Brian Polito's work, on now Stepan Sejic's work. This work that puts sexuality at the forefront in a positive way, whether it be like Sejic's work as part of the narrative or like Xenoscope's as just a cover marketing ploy. That audience is a lot more diverse than its critics would give it credit for. And again, it goes back to manga. You see the young audience, young men, and especially young women love, as your friend tweeted, waifu content. Those booths that sell the waifu standees, like the acrylic standees.
Yeah.
Women are buying those. Women are drawing those. Almost all of my not safe for work covers drawn by women. It's such an old critique. I see it so much less now. But back in the day, I got it a lot. And it was always older dudes complaining about Xenoscope. And I believe that the times has shown them how wrong they are to be obsessed with these books about men in tights punching people and just demonizing books about sex, which is far more universal. I mean, the extent to which that's more universal than the superhero genre, it's astronomical, you know. So that's definitely, it's been such a weird point that I've seen that, you know, and again, it's dwindling. That critique is going away. But man, was it a big part of my first few years of writing.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And it's funny because I've always said that, like, the cover draws you in, but then like you read it and it's a really good story. You know?
Yeah. I definitely said that myself, you know. And part of why I'm doing my Cheeky Comics imprint and why I wrote Thirsty, Cheeky, and Steamy with Amy was that, you know, back in the day, even some of my peers, fellow writers, would talk about me, talk about Xenoscope, subtweet us saying that it's porn, you know?
Yeah.
And the truth is that it wasn't. But my thought was, what is so wrong with sex? What are you so ashamed of? Because you said that, I'm now going to write porn, literal porn, that is better than anything that you'll ever write. It's better than your magnum opus. I will bring character, theme, narrative arcs to what you critique to show you that you were wrong about Xenoscope, but even if you were right, still fuck you, you know?
Awesome. That might be one of the best comments I've ever heard about those kinds of critiques. Cool. All right. So I think what we'll do, we'll wrap up this section, and I'll wrap it up with the question I normally end interviews on, and that is, how do you measure success?
How do I measure success? Yeah, you know, like I've had to answer this question in multiple different ways, and I always try to think outside of the box because people say, "What does breaking into comics mean? What does this mean?" And the truth is that, to me, it means at this point a different thing that it meant before. Before, I might say it means to become professional, to write and get paid for it. Now the truth is that success to me means to be able to do whatever I want to do as a creator.
Yeah.
That I don't have to say yes to anyone that I want, that I don't want to work with, that I don't have to take opportunities that I don't find interesting. And most of all, thanks to my readership, thanks to Kickstarter, thanks for the shifting market, I don't have to ever go up to a publisher or IP farm's door and say, never.
Right.
I do it now.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have to go to any of these publishers and write an editor who I've never met, who I probably wouldn't like it if I met in person, and ask them to give me a chance. I don't need a chance anymore. And I feel that is success, and it's obtainable to any comics creator. Those of you who are working on pitches for publishers who will greenlight you, not market you, sell your book in comic stores where they have to order issues 1, 2, and 3 before anyone reads number 1. You don't need that. You don't need them. All you need is yourself, your mind, and great artists.
Awesome. I see JD nodding along in agreement there.
That is awesome. That's perfect. Well said.
Thank you.
And you've used that term IP farm a lot on this show, JD.
That's why I nodded. Because there's like minds. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with a fun little topic to finish up on.
Cool.
We're talking bass fishing off the station club.
Ultraverse on sale today.
Comic book store. Let's go.
They couldn't be there in 38 for the launch of that Super Guy, or in 62 for the launch of that Spider Guy, but they can be there now for the birth of the Ultraverse.
Line! That way!
Prime Hard Case, first editions in comic shops June 16th. To enter to win one of 200 special edition posters, call this number now.
Wow.
Remember the Ultraverse?
Barely. I didn't remember them being TV commercials for that. That's actually wild.
Yeah. That's actually was sent to me by Joey from So Wizard to use on the show. So
well done, Joey. I like that.
So we were going to talk about this last week, and we ended up not getting to it. And so I'm kind of curious because of your the way you came into comics, Pat. Of course, Superman just turned 85 this year. He's been around. He's the first superhero, as it were. So I'm kind of curious. He's touched everyone in the comic book industry in some way. What was your introduction to Superman?
Oh, I don't know. I read a few of the comics here and there, but I would be as able to answer that less as the Star Wars question. I've read some of his stuff for work, for like modern writer reviews classic comic, but I don't personally know. Sorry.
I didn't think that would go over. I think I was looking. This might be an interesting answer. I want to hear what Pat has to say about this.
Yeah.
So
I'm bigger on Supergirl and Superman. I have read most Supergirl comics up until New 52, and so I probably read like the 90s run to that run. But yeah, no, it's kind of not for me, I think that Alan Moore's classics, great. A few that I've read here and there, really cool. But it was never a story that spoke to me personally.
Interesting. What is it? Because I mean, obviously, you're not as much into classic superheroes, and I'm just kind of curious. Like, what is it that doesn't speak to you about them? Is it the heavy-handed morality? Is it because you do write a lot of stuff that is more gray?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it feels like, dicey. Ah, boy, it feels like.
Yeah, you don't want to kill your career here, so be careful.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like anyone who knows my stuff wouldn't think, oh yeah, I see this Superman influence here,
Right.
But I don't know. When I look at the older comics, I feel like I do when I look at, TV before the 80s. I look at, like older movies where it's like, oh yeah, they're for the time cool, but there's so much innovation that hasn't happened yet that I can see in real time looking when I read through these comics. It's fun to see from a sort of intellectual standpoint, watching someone come in and blow the doors off and go, oh, this is going to be the influential run that adds this element to how comics are read now. And then this, and that. Cool. But personally, for enjoyment as a reader and inspiration, I feel like I came in the game way too late to enjoy those personally. I started reading comics. I had a box, a shoebox of like Creep Show. That was more along my lines of an older comic that I loved. The Bernie Wrightson art, the Stephen King writing, that to me was great. I had Rocketeer, which I'll be real, I read because of a sexy lady. I opened the book and hot girl. I am an 8-year-old boy. Of course, that's what you see. But I only started to dip into the classics about a decade ago, I guess. The first comics that I read consistently were in the mid 2000s.
Oh wow, okay.
So yeah, it's far removed from my comic experiences.
All right. I'm pretty sure JD and I have the same answer to the question. We probably both initially experienced Superman in the movie, the 1978 movie. Yeah, that was our introduction to Superman.
on TV. Yeah, I was too young to watch it in the theater, not being born. -7 or something like that, or 5.
Yeah, I was 4. I didn't see it in the theater either. It was VCR when it came out on video. So, yeah. I mean, it's funny. It is what probably got me interested in comics in the first place.
Oh, that's great.
And then it's funny, though. I will say this, and this is one of those things I don't think a lot of people realize. If you go back, I have a lot of the collected editions from the 40s and some from the 50s of Superman. It was a much different character back then. He was such a different character when they first introduced him. He was very misogynistic, but of course it's the time, right? And like I actually would say stuff about like Lois being a dumb broad and all in the strips.
Yeah.
And like that
yeah.
that flew back then. You could never get away with that today.
Oh, never, never, never.
You know, I would love to see try to republish those in like I'm sure they go through those and censor out now. Like they don't show the really bad ones, but
yeah.
So yeah. All right. Well, we killed that quick.
Sorry, guys.
Oh, it's all right, man.
So let me ask you then, just out of curiosity, are there any traditional superheroes at all that you like? Like,
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, Supergirl, I like.
Okay.
I like Batman. I like Thor. I mean, the core Marvel characters, I was genuinely excited and happy to write them. A lot of the comics that I read in the mid 2000s were the Marvel comics from that era. The only Marvel heroes I don't really personally connect to a lot is the X-Men. I have written them once and I liked that experience, but I feel more of a distance from them than say Captain America personally, as far as DC goes, I like Stephanie Brown Batgirl.
Okay.
I like Stargirl. Batman's villains are sick, but I don't really list those kind of things as inspiration. It's more part of a cool part about comics, like the legacy of passing down these characters, which have been sort of like building the American mythology. But I don't find the fiction of them to be influential on what I'm doing personally.
Right. And I get it too, because you are a little younger than us. You got into it a couple decades after me, and I can definitely see why. We've talked about this on the show many times. Is there is a barrier to entry to comics, and characters that have been around for 85 years, and even though he's been reinvented many times and reintroduced and put on TV and movies and stuff and retold his origin, and it's always tweaked a little bit, it's still tough to like pick up a comic at number 1000 and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I understand everything that's going on here.
It sure is. And I mean, that's it's kind of hard to avoid too, because part of the situation that they're in is that they want to deliver these jumping on points. At the same time, though, they have to appeal to people who made the characters famous for years. There are people who will read every Batman comic until they are deceased, right? And they don't want to just explain what Batman is over and over and over every issue, or every arc or every new writer. That would not be great. But also, it is not great to have unskilled writers continuing these legacy characters for long periods of time and making it so that people who watch these popular movies go and read comics and they read something that is indecipherable.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and it's funny too, because I think back to when I started reading comics, and there was an edict in Marvel. I think it came down from Stan that everyone's comic could be their first comic. And so like you would read, I don't know how many Spider-Man issues I have where there's a flashback to his origin in it, in some way, shape, or form. And it's like, okay, I get it, but like this is the 30th time I've read about him getting bit by a radioactive spider and then letting a thief go by who then kills his uncle. It's like, yes, we know the story, but
yeah, no, I agree. Part of what we're doing with I used to be a staff writer for Xenoscope. I was exclusive, doing it full time. Now I run my own company. So what I do for Xenoscope is all work for hire. My main work there right now is my second Van Helsing run. And part of their current run of books, they don't really do ongoing or miniseries anymore. They will do their flagship characters will have one-shots every other month that over the course of a year builds into a full arc. Now, Van Helsing's story is told in these one-shots. It begins with an annual and then continues with these 30-page one-shots. Each one-shot resolves by the end, but also builds. So I'm very careful to not, give the information over and over and over again. I will catch readers up who missed the last issue with a caption sometimes of the most important information only when it becomes relevant to what's going on in that story.
Okay.
But to remind, I have never done a "this is how Van Helsing started hunting vampires" panel, like that. It doesn't make sense to me,
Yeah, agreed. And I guess too, when not Xenoscope, because again, that is still like they're not Marvel or DC, but they've been around for a while and they have IP, and there is like, I know there's rules for writing the characters and all those kinds of things. But with your independent work, like, you're free to like kill a character if you want and then be done with the character forever. Whereas famously in the 90s, they killed Superman, but that did not last long at all, So that's one of the things too, I've always kind of like, if they finally just killed a superhero and just stopped making the book, like, I understand there's the whole IP farm, but like Superman has a son now in the comics, so can't we kill Clark Kent and then just have his son take over the role and move forward with that and just never bring Clark Kent back again,
Probably not. Xenoscope did it with their main character, Sky. I actually got to kill her after 125 issues. No, not Sky, Sela. And now Sky, her daughter, has taken over.
Right.
But they can do that because, as many people care, it's not tied to multiple different media movie franchises, So that's one of the things that makes it so, as cool as it is to pass down this legacy of these heroes, there's something that's very limiting about it as well.
True. Very true. Yeah. So, all right. I think we killed that enough. So let's wrap this one up. And we always wrap it up with either A, did you learn something on the podcast this week? Or B, do you have any recommendations for the watchers and listeners? So Pat, you're the guest. You can go first.
Do I have any recommendations? I would recommend I'll go with my friend Dave Franchini. He is currently the publisher at Xenoscope. He has an ongoing run with Xenoscope's Bell. I think that is a great run for anyone who wants to jump on and see what Xenoscope is about. And yeah, it's been cool watching Dave. He started as Xenoscope's salesman, and he has since risen to essentially be steering the ship of their stories. And it is an amazing evolution to see, one that should be talked a lot more about in the comics industry.
Cool. JD?
Catch Return of the Jedi this week. It's an awesome experience in the theater. Something about watching a big movie like that, and it's aged pretty good, surprisingly. And I learned that I need to catch up on Pat Shannon's work, man. It sounds like I would click with it really well.
Thank you very much.
Cool. I learned that there are younger people who don't read superhero comics, and that's okay because they're brilliant writers. And I definitely recommend, if you've not read Pat's Robin Hood run, because that's where I learned who you were, and I love those books. I have them collected in the 3 volumes. Go check it out. Like, it's really good stuff. Yes. I also would recommend you go to superheroespeak.com, where you can find the podcast every week. Links to all our social media at the top of the page, comic book reviews by our good friend Kristen, and so much more. And make sure you go see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, because that is what we will be talking about on this podcast next week. So until then, you know what? Before I sign off, Pat, real quick, where can people find you on social media? I forgot to ask that.
All right, social media, I'm at Pat Shand. For my Kickstarter right now, in the description below, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yes, it is I Summoned Cthulhu to fund my Kickstarter. And also, I am doing Cheeky Comics Annual 2023 on Kickstarter as well. It's the launch of this imprint of Not Safe for Work books. The URL is tinyurl.com/cheeky annual. If you get both, you get a special, beautiful, double-sized print. And thank you for having me.
Cool. All right. Well, on that note, boys and girls, as always, thanks for watching. Don't let your cape go out the door. Have a good week.